Chapter 12. Daylight Assault. The valley awoke under a pale sun, its light spilling across timber walls and shallow trenches, illuminating the remnants of last night's sabotage. Smoke from small fires drifted upward, twisting into ribbons that hinted at the chaos of the previous hours. Raiden crouched behind the western barricade, his gaze sweeping the tree line. He had learned to anticipate patterns. He did not need the tribe's words to sense the approach of the Romans. The distant shimmer of shields, moving in slow, synchronized arcs, was all the signal he required. The first units emerged from the forest, heavy shields catching sunlight in sudden bursts. Archers lined behind them, bolts ready. Engineers carried timber and rope, ready to build ramps and mantlets. The rhythm of their advance was methodical, unhurried, precise. Each step, each formation adjustment, revealed a disciplined mind at work, one that had survived centuries of conquest by thinking in sequences, not in panic. Raiden moved swiftly along the barrier, pointing out weak points in the timber to the tribe's defenders. He gestured to the slope on the right, where the soil had softened overnight, and mimed the way a rolling ram might compromise the gate. The tall warrior caught on instantly, ordering a few men to reinforce the section with wedges and stacked stones. The older man adjusted archers along the walls, sending shafts at the forward ranks as the Romans approached. Raiden's hands worked in tandem with his mind, rearranging small barricades and bracing points, instinctively calculating angles of impact and leverage. The first clash came when the leading infantry struck against the outer palisade. Timber groaned, shields met shields, arrows hissed through the air. The valley's defenders fought with bravery, but the Romans pressed with a machine-like efficiency. Raiden's mind ran ahead of the chaos, anticipating shifts in formation and likely points of weakness. The Romans tested the walls and gates, each strike measured, each movement a calculated probe. He noted the pattern immediately. The front line would hold, shielded, while the engineers at the back applied pressure at critical points. Where one strike faltered, another was ready in perfect sequence. He whispered fragments of observation to the tall warrior, who relayed commands as best he could, though the understanding was imperfect. Even so, the defenders adapted quickly, shoring up weakened timbers and adjusting arrows to intercept the advancing engineers. Smoke from small fires began to drift upward as the Romans brought forward a siege tower, taller than any previous attempt. Platforms rose above the shielded base, and Raiden's sharp eyes picked out the outlines of archers ready to rain fire upon the walls. He gestured to the tribe, miming the use of water and bundled hides to dampen the timber and reduce flammability. They followed, carrying soaked cloths and earth, pressing them against the anticipated points of attack. The Romans did not falter. They advanced in calculated steps, each unit covering the other. Commands rang out, clipped syllables that Raiden could not yet fully understand, but their rhythm became increasingly clear. He repeated them under his breath, mapping sound to action, building a mental translation rooted in observation, not memory. The siege tower halted briefly as the leading wheels sank into softer soil. Engineers scrambled to correct the imbalance. Raiden gestured urgently, demonstrating how to reinforce the ground with hastily laid stones. The defenders obeyed, pushing into position just in time. Archers on the tower loosed bolts. Some found targets, others struck harmlessly against reinforced timber. The tower continued forward, inch by inch, until the slope gave it momentum toward the gate. Raiden moved along the wall, bracing and redirecting defenders, each action a careful calculation of physics and force. When the forward motion threatened to topple part of the wall, he gestured to push against weakened sections with controlled weight, redirecting pressure and stabilizing the timber. Shouts echoed across the valley, mixing with the clash of wood and iron. Raiden felt the strain in the defender's muscles, the sweat along his own brow, the tightness in every nerve. Yet his mind remained calm, a quiet observer in the heart of chaos, calculating patterns faster than any human could. The Romans were relentless, but they were predictable. Each strike, each adjustment, each sequence of commands could be anticipated and countered. By midday, the first major assault had faltered. The tower was damaged, its wheels partially destroyed, and the front line had been disrupted enough to allow defenders to repel it temporarily. Smoke rose thick and heavy, marking the battlefield in gray tendrils. Raiden's eyes never left the forest edge. More units were assembling, more engineers carrying timber and ropes, more archers readying bolts. The Romans had escalated, but they were not invincible. They would adapt, but so would the valley. Raiden's hands itched to move again, to reinforce, to anticipate, to direct. Yet a cold understanding settled within him. This was only the beginning. The Romans were methodical. They would continue refining their tactics, probing weaknesses, testing limits. The valley could survive another assault, but it would require everything he had observed, calculated, and learned in these weeks. And as he scanned the advancing formations, he realized something else entirely. This was more than survival. This was a test for him and for the machine he now faced. There is always a story to be told out here in the frontier, as long as there is someone to listen, like, and subscribe, and join us again for more.